welcome to Rugby Through the Leagues podcast. Another episode this week. Nice little tedious link from one rooftop here to our guest this week, Dan Richmond. So Dan joined us this week from São Paulo. So throughout the pod, there's a little bit of background noise, which is nice to always mix up to see where he is and in the situation that he's in. So Dan joined us from São Paulo, Brazil, from working with their international team for that week. So jumped on after a busy day of coaching as well, which is really appreciate that, Dan. And I think we had a really good conversation about coaching techniques and how World Rugby are trying to make an impact on the world, the tier 2, tier 3 and developing international nations, which I know sometimes we give a lot of heat for the RFU and World Rugby making certain decisions, but there's a lot of stuff that they seem to be doing in the background that don't seem to be telling other people about, which is a bit of a shame, because what World Rugby do sometimes is good, sometimes it is dog shit. So let's try and shine a light on the positives for a change, and let's get on with this interview. Dan, really great guest, extensive rugby knowledge, extensive rugby CV. He's been around a little while, but he's got a real passion for the game and a real passion to try and make a difference with the players that he's got, that he's trying to coach with the Italian pathway in South America. So a lot to tap into and a great episode. I know last week was a slight change to the scheduled programming because we should have had Dan on last week's episode, but hopefully the grassroots rugby review was a positive and people enjoyed it. I know it was a slight difference. However, we are going to get back to a bit more grassroots rugby stuff, as I said, in that episode in the coming weeks. So we've got a couple of lads coming on from England to help. We've already started taking bookings and scheduled stuff in. So yeah, the lead up to Christmas looks exciting with some really good episodes coming up for grassroots rugby as well. So thanks for everyone for joining. Make sure you follow, subscribe, like, comment, share the love of the pod. Let's try and keep this growing, and we can obviously get to talk to some bigger guests. And obviously this series sort of comes to an end at the end of November, and then we go again in February, but in between we're going to fill it up with grassroots rugby. So all right, let's get on with this one. It's another blinder. So got another interview in this week. We've got Dan Richmond on. As you can see from the background, Dan is not in England, I can assume, and obviously the nice busy road and central hub. For those, Dan, that don't know, where are you now currently based, and where have you sort of travelled from and that?
Yeah, so currently working out with the Brazilian national team. So I'm in downtown São Paulo. So yeah, you'll hear the busy streets. Yeah, so I've got a week here working across the men's, women's programs and supporting the coaches.
Brilliant. So Dan, obviously your rugby CV is quite extensive. You've done some bits. Obviously you're over with Brazil at the minute. Where's a brief overview of where your journey started, how it sort of got to where it is now, and then we'll sort of jump across into what you focus on currently and how you want to try and make an impact within World Rugby for those. Because you sort of recently focused more on like the tier 2, tier 3 nations. Is that sort of where it's at the minute, and you're trying to focus on bringing them up to level with your current line-out coaching?
Yeah, so again, like World Rugby are obviously targeting the developing nations. So again, a lot of those countries, the challenges are they have a smaller playing pool, and often a lot of their coaches come from the amateur game. So again, part of my role as a coach and a consultant is to, again, just help bring over some of the modern techniques, latest thinking, strategies that's happening at the top of the game, and most importantly is the education of helping to develop the coaches and the players to, again, sort of accelerate their learning so that they can be self-sufficient. So yeah, very fortunate to have been approached by World Rugby, and yeah, so I've been able to sort of travel the world and again help. So mainly I get sent out to South America. A link sort of developed over time from when I was working in the Premiership, and Augustine Creevy came over to Worcester, and Worcester got me in as a consultant to focus on the line-out throwing. And in Argentina, they referred to the hooker as a central prop. So again, the history of scrummaging was that the hooker would not hook the ball, and the role of the hooker was, again, to be that central prop, and line-out throwing was not on the radar for their skill set. So Gus came across and we did some work together, and off the back of that, he recommended me to come into the Argentina environment, and that's when that program started, with going out, running coach development, educating the players on the skills. Now, I was fortunate enough as a player, for my time at Northampton Saints, was to be coached by Simon Hardy, who was the England throwing coach, and Simon would go around the clubs working with the current England players, and also as a goodwill gesture, he would work with the English qualified players. So I was very fortunate. My competition was Steve Thompson, and again, I was fortunate enough to be taught by Simon, and again, I regard him as a mentor, a friend, and he's been very supportive to me, my development. And again, I've been so fortunate to pass on those skills, because again, it's still a part of the game that is a little bit misunderstood. So again, I want to try and pass on that knowledge.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously, South America, going into the middle of that, as you said, them understanding the hooker as the middle prop or central prop.
Yeah.
Is the skill gap completely not there and it's a blank canvas, or have you got to educate a base knowledge and then sort of teach out bad habits, or are they just sat there on YouTube and then you've come in and said, hold on, we've actually got to do this, this and this? Like, that must be a really weird platform to work around.
So when I first started going out to South America, again, it was a case of working with the players in their development squads. Now,
so when did you start that? What year did you sort of get out there?
Yeah, I think that was around about 2012, 2013.
Okay, so a little while ago then.
Yeah, fair while back now. So again, like most players, what happens, and this happens across all clubs, all countries, the young hookers get taught by a senior hooker. Now, of course, what happens is the senior hooker taught themselves how to throw, and they teach that way. So that was very common. And of course, there's some natural body mechanics in how we throw a ball, which is naturally, if I asked you to throw a tennis ball or American football, you'd grab it in like a C shape, and you'd rotate and you'd throw. Now, that natural throwing movement has a lot of errors in it when we ask to throw into a lineup, where we want everything linear and pointing towards the target and symmetrical. So that's common. That's like the common theme that when I start with working with players is how to introduce new movement patterns, and for them to become more aware of body, their dominant side to their body, and how to regulate that. So most players get taught by senior pros, or they watch players on the TV. And as we know, a senior player now is never injury free. So what you see is an athlete performing with compensations, because they've all got niggles and shoulder injuries or neck injuries, or the years of being battered in the scrum. So they make compensations. So the young player watches a technique which is full of compensations, and they think that's the right way to throw. So there's always that little bit of re-education that goes into helping them to do it, and then it's discovering the new movement patterns, getting comfortable with those, and then it's over to them to refine their technique based on their movement, their mobility, to produce their throw.
So how do you do that? Have you got like if you got into the video games and stuff, they've got like the mechanism and all of that sort of stuff. Have you got a World Rugby kitted you out with a load of Gucci gadgets that you can record it, put them in like a green suit, make them like look like do all that, or have you literally got everything's videoed and you break it down second by second to rotate the player? I don't know, obviously.
I wish it was like the Matrix stepping in. So probably some great sort of reading and background. There's a great book called The Inner Game of Tennis, which talks about the body can produce the movement, it hasn't learnt it yet. And if we try and give lots of information when we ask a player to perform a close skill, so like a goal kick or like a line out throw, that inhibits the natural learning process. So what I've explored and tried to develop over the years is a way of creating physical exercises which performs the desired movement without overloading with the detail. And the big decision with a close skill that the coach has to make is that if I choose to make a correction or make a suggestion, be it positive or be it corrective, it's going to interrupt the natural flow of the movement. So then that player will start to think about said correction or become aware of something, and that will be at the detriment of the other parts of the skill, the rhythm.
Okay, so you basically go through the movements without telling them what the end goal is. Are a lot of them sort of receptive to that? Do you, obviously, I'm sure there's a review at the end that this is why we've done this X, Y, and Z, and then you don't want to overload it. But like, surely there's some that will respond to you've got to do this, this, and this. Others will. You've got to be slowly catchy monkey, filter it in, and that must be quite difficult to do on short windows, because you seem to go in, consultant, go in for a week or 2 weeks, come away. There's a lot of carry-ons and stuff. How do you got to obviously try and understand that between the player and the coaches as well, I assume. So that's quite an impact to make in such a short period of time.
Yeah, so working with like a senior pro, what you've got to respect is that they have created their own technique. So it's really important that we sort of, again, build the foundations of trust. So it would be wrong to go in and say, I can help you improve your technique here, because they're naturally going to be defensive because they're already at a competent level. So it's about taking them through the session to try and find like a quick win, identifying something that they can feel the benefit of, because the close skill is about, yes, we want an awareness of what you're going to do, but we want you to develop a movement pattern, and we want that movement pattern to become subconscious over time. So it's about feeling the movement. So there's that blend between, an understanding, so knowledge of the movement, but actually performing the desired movement. And how often can we perform the desired movement? Now, that might be like you see with a lot of hookers practicing. They might be laying back on a yoga ball, they might be using heavy balls, they might be using resistance bands, and that is just a way of training the movement pattern we want, the different sort of muscle firing patterns. So with an established pro, we're only looking for maybe like a 1-2% refinement to their technique. To the younger players, we can take them through that skill development pathway. So we can ask them to perform an exercise with a specific hand placement that then over time that then develops their technique. But again, if you do that with a senior pro, then they look at you funny as if like they're a little bit reluctant to explore.
Yeah.
So that, like everything, that's the balance, and you've got to respect they've created their skill, their technique through their experiences. Yeah. So a friend of mine, the coach, said best advice that I'm trying to carry on is it's connection before correction. And with my work where I run the line out throwing program in the Italian pathway, that has been so valuable, especially working with the pros over there. So you've got to create an enjoyable space. You've got to find a quick win for those senior players, so they start to become receptive to exploring techniques. And like we always say, if we introduce something new, if they're open-minded to try it, then we ask them. Then I sort of ask them to say, okay, now what percentage of that do you want to carry over into your practice? So if we've done something to make their hand placement more effective. Then they try it. Okay, I wouldn't expect them to go straight into, okay, now I'm going to go straight into this. It's like practice in isolation, feel comfortable with it, try it in practice, and then through those reps, you will naturally adopt that technique, and then you'll produce that in the game. So it can be quite a strategic sort of way, and a slow, gentle way of introducing change and refinements in those senior players.
Are the senior players probably the most resistant to you coming in, or some really open, or
they all are, because again they're competitive animals. They want they want to improve. They want the 1%ers. They want that nugget. You know, when you're working with those players, it's like, well, okay, let's explore. Tell me what you like, and we'll go down that route. You know, they've got to be part. They've got to be part of that. As I say, the younger players, the newer players, I've designed a framework that I take them through, because they've got to get that volume of repetition into their practice to develop that muscle memory.
That's the same thing. Is it? They say that if you do an action 50,000 times, you become world class at it, or something like that. Is that the same sort of your muscle memory becomes your bog standard if you go through the same trajectory on your line out throw that you practice and you build that framework around? Yeah.
So there's a little bit. Again, that 10,000 hour rule, you know, they've now sort of dug a little bit deeper into that, and that study actually came from, I think they were like a world-class orchestra to begin with.
Right.
So the simple hours, it might be 10,000, it might be 8,000, it might be 12,000.
Yeah.
But the point is, the key is that it has to be purposeful. It has to be accurate practice, and that's where a lot of my work now with the players I've worked with over the years is they'll drop me a video, and then, you know, they might have come back from a little injury, and that's always when we start to see some compensations. So you just need a fresh pair of eyes, and we can then sort of advise them with mobility exercises, working with the strength and conditioners to enable them to sort of, again, get close to optimum.
What is the most common thing then that you have to correct, or feel that is the most common across the board for correction? A requirement. I know you've said obviously players naturally put compensations in because of injuries. Is that the most common, or is it hand placement? Or
So the most common is the hand placement, and the hand placement affects everything. So, however, with that said, when it comes to working with a new player, is you can't just go straight into working with corrected hand placement, because they'll go from being able to produce a throw to not be able to produce a throw, and you know they'll be pretty disappointed with me. So hand placement has a big impact on your setup posture, your recoil rhythm, and how you release the ball. So again, over the years of trial and error and exploring different ways, is that we created like a framework that I use, that if we can get an effective posture and a consistent recoil rhythm, those two elements of consistency is an introduction into exploring hand placement. And then but again, like I say, with established players, and the thing that I hear the most is like, oh, this feels really strange, this is really alien to me. And it's, well, look, of course, once you've done 100 of those, maybe it'll feel a little bit more frequent. So again, those sorts of sessions have got to be, you know, they've got to be fun. They've got to be a session of exploring. So again, my demeanour, my delivery has to make sure that we stay in that way, because again, as soon as a player starts to over process, they're going to start to again like tense up a little bit, and that has a detrimental effect as well. So yes, it's a real balance on delivery and the technical aspects.
You mentioned earlier as well about WhatsApp and stuff like that, and players being able to send videos of that. Has that been probably one of the biggest step forwards in your accessibility to players while being away? Like you don't have to be there, but you can still access them quite easily? They can send you exactly what's happening and you can review it. Has that been a big stride forward for supporting the developing nations as well, without having you to be in Brazil, etc., all the time constantly?
Yeah, exactly, and that's a big tool I use for working with the Italian pathway. So the players are in their different SAP groups around the country, and they post videos, and then I can give them instant feedback, and the coaches, and they can be supported through their practice, so that again it's the correct practice as opposed to repping something that is going to be ineffective or cause problems down the line. So I think what's come out of COVID again is everyone is more receptive to this type of communication and learning, and in a way that was another a great challenge for me was, okay, can I coach this skill without physically being there? How can I design exercises whilst we're having this conversation now? So that's been a great challenge, and I'd encourage that to a lot of coaches. Okay, can you coach passing whilst on a Zoom call, or goal kicking, or how would you explain it? So there's been many sort of WhatsApp video calls where I've got props doing their crouch bind sequence against the wall, and got hookers laying on the floor of their apartments, and spinning a rugby ball and so on. So it's just about, again, for me the challenge was being able to communicate it effectively and design the relevant skills for them to go and practice.
So you haven't had to resort to start doing like a demo in your kitchen at home while you sat there spinning a ball in front of it, or propping against the kitchen side or something? Oh
yeah, all of that, and like the
Mrs. walks in like, what are you up to, Dan? What's going on?
She knows. She knows. So it's like, right, hold the camera here, and I'll do this. And, so that's that happens quite frequently. So, and that's the other thing, is like that, being able to sort of collate a large amount of video of training and so on, and for me that's always the pursuit for me. The challenge is like, okay, how can I refine this exercise to be the best exercise for a specific element of a skill? That's what sort of really floats my boat.
Nice. So we've mentioned, obviously, you go in and sort of support the players. Obviously, you also mentioned about, obviously, developing nations. A lot of the coaches are coming off the amateur game, etc., etc. You have to coach a coach who's obviously had to adapt their own way of learning to coach to start with. How do you go in and support them? Is it the same WhatsApp groups, the same framework, the same this to support the players, or are they part of it? Because obviously a lot of coaches are probably pretty much one or two coaches. They can't cover. They cover a wide expanse of that developing nation. Do you give them enough to guide the players, and you support the players, or how does that work? And how do you sort of build that framework alongside the coaches?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to that connection first of all, and again, so get an understanding of where they are within their season, what that looks like within the challenges they've got with their player development, their skill development, and being guided by them. Again, it's like, I'm here to help and support first and foremost, so they're very much part of the conversation. Okay, where do you want to start, and then we build from there. And often, once we've had a day or two of that, then the conversations go a bit wider, and we go a little bit deeper into things. And again, ultimately, my role is to support them. So first of all, I've got to get an understanding of their environment, the challenges they face, and it's never a perfect environment. You can imagine if the coaches out in Brazil, they have to deliver one session on the pitch from with the men, and then they might have to go straight into another session with the women. Now, is that two different session plans? You've got to think about the energy levels of the coaches. Often they're getting in very early, so they could be out on pitch for maybe 3 hours. It gets crazy hot. You think about hydration. There's all those factors. So it's never this perfect model. So a lot of these coaches have got tough challenges anyway. So it's just working with that and understanding those challenges, and then exploring ways to implement whatever their specifics are. If it's player development, maybe it's strategy, or maybe it's about developing the culture, the mindset, the mentality. So we'll sort of be guided that way. So, and often it's great to get off-site, get out of the office, and go and find somewhere off-site, have a bite to eat. Everything's a little bit more relaxed, and get to understand the environment and the challenges, and then work with them.
So obviously you've done Brazil. You've previously gone to Paraguay as well, correct?
Yeah, so this is my second trip to Brazil. I did a week in Paraguay. Again, starting with introducing the line-out throwing skill, because again it's fairly unknown, the techniques out here, and then supporting around that. So again, what their program looks like, any areas they need support, those sorts of things. Then before that, this year I've also been with Spain and with Portugal.
Nice.
So it's been busy.
Yeah, lovely. So I actually saw Brazil last November. I think it might have been November. Something. Okay. They come and played Spain. They come and played in Spain. So they played against Canada. They played Spain, Canada, and USA and Brazil in a sort of a 2-week tournament. They played a semi-final the week before and then played afterwards. But Brazil, they look like they're a proper outfit to a certain extent. They got to about 60 minutes and then sort of the batteries run out. But there's a really good base to start from as well for an emerging sort of nation. Is it now they're at the sort of point of the 1 and the 2 and 3% that will make a difference between them making an impact on the world stage?
Yeah, I think so. What I've been, like I say, really impressed with is they've got their high performance centre. Of course, you got to look at it on their sort of physical development with their fitness levels, their endurance, they're big men, they're big powerful men. They're blessed with that. Yeah, so I think you look at teams like Brazil, Chile, being fortunate to be involved with the Chile program pre-World Cup and in the World Cup to see how they've kicked on from that experience, and Brazil are on their coattails, really sort of chasing them down. So they're definitely the World Cup qualifiers. They're gunning to try and follow in Chile's footsteps with getting to the World Cup. They've got some players playing over in Europe as well, which when they're brought back into the squad will definitely make a difference. So it's often a balance now at this stage of the season for these nations is to develop some strength in depth, bring in some of the young players and try and focus on some of the upskilling and improve their conditioning, so that when it gets around to the World Cup qualifiers, they've got their identity, and that's what's really important. Is what is we talk about the Brazilian forwards. Well, what's that going to look like? Is that a big scrum? Is that a scrum for penalties? Is that a really aggressive maul? Is it a team that plays off the top and plays a lot of fast tempo? Whatever that looks like, I think they're certainly starting to put that framework together.
No, it's good to see. And then because there's a lot of hype around Paraguay being probably the more of the emerging nation, but obviously you got. I think have they got to take on Hong Kong, China in the sort of the qualifier, how it models out for the qualifier mix or something like that. Hong Kong's in the mix definitely, and being over there again. What's great with these nations is the infrastructure is in place. So again, they have another Olympic training centre, so they've got good gym, good pitch. What the challenge for the nations is the strength in depth, is the depth chart, and often it's like you get your under 20s, and then they go straight into the seniors. So I was just having that conversation today. Is like, my time working in the Premiership, when I worked with a team
that paid right up to the salary cap, and you could drive performance in training because you had a like for like. You had one guy that was star, and the guy that was on the bench was of equal caliber. So the standard in training and games, it just took care of itself. I was then been in other environments in the Premiership where they had a very low budget, and you had to get every ounce of grit and determination and resilience and guile out of the guys, because underneath them were academy players coming through. So again, from having those experiences, it's like, well, how do we drive standards now? One conversation that we had today was looking at somewhere like, well, what does world class look like? For example, when I worked with Chile, we timed the speed of the ball for the different areas of the lineouts. So we could get a marker based on, okay, what does the tier one nations throw and how quickly are they into the air? And are we near that? Because that group was going into the unknown. They'd never played against England, Japan, Samoa, and so on. So it was like we needed to give them targets where we wouldn't have got equal competition through just the individuals, because there was a golfing ability. So getting creative with how we drive the standards in this environment, I think, is the key, really.
Yeah, so obviously, as you said, you've got Spain and Portugal as well. They're probably more of a tier 2 nation, so they're probably a couple of steps ahead. Obviously, they've got to find the 1% and the 2%. Is the framework a lift and shift from all tiers, or have you adapted a tier 2 one as well? Because obviously Portugal went to the World Cup, done very, very well, created an identity as a very good international side. They've got a very good sort of league system, and obviously competing in the Rugby Europe Super Cup as well with the Lustianos, and then they've got their own sort of competition within the Rugby Europe Championship as well, putting up a fair fight against Georgia. I think Georgia obviously are that step above, and people can't quite get there, but they've got aspirations to get towards that, which is brilliant. But is your framework lift and shift, or have you got to adapt it from emerging to tier 3 to tier 2, or how does that work in your side of it?
Yeah, so with for example, my trip earlier this year with Portugal was to work with their pathway. Because again, if you think about it, if we're working on a World Cup cycle of 4 years, well, if I'm working with 19, 20-year-olds, the likelihood is
they're going to be in the door,
need to be prepared. So that's where you're looking at like the foundations of the skill. And then the following week I went in with Spain. Now that was a different challenge. They had a game. That was a game week. So again, it's a completely different approach. It's being guided by the players for their throwing. So we want them to be confident, want them to be efficient in their movements, make sure their timing's correct. And that week, again, it was helping them to around their scrum and some work with them in the gym and so on. So again, the trips always have like specific goals for them. But like I say, for like the tier 2, tier 3 nations is that on a World Cup cycle, year one, those 19, 20-year-olds potentially could be involved in the playing squad for the World Cup. So it's important that we start to introduce the skills that allows them to perform at a level that maybe they've never experienced before. And this was a conversation I was having today with the players, is that the skills that we've explored today aren't to enable you to perform at your current level. They're to enable you to perform at a higher level above, more consistent. When you're in a World Cup playoff to try and get into the World Cup, the level of consistency, what we need there, we know from our experience, you're not there yet. So that's the reason why. So, but again, on the whole, the players that I've met and worked with and the coach and that are always receptive. And it was always a bugbear for me, is that in professional sport, the margins of winning and losing are so fine, and coaching can sometimes be a closed shop. So I was like, well, I need to put my money where my mouth is. If I've got something to offer that's a skill, then I can't just keep it for myself. I've got to get out there, and I've got to share it. And off having that shift in mindset has got to this point, and it's opened more doors than it ever would have if I just tried to keep all that information to myself and be paranoid about sharing it if someone's going to copy. Because again, what I've come to learn over...
watch YouTube. Everyone can watch YouTube or watch games. It's there. They've got somebody else analysis. We obviously had Tom Martin on, the All Black Sevens performance analyst, the other day. Everything's being watched. Everything's being analysed. So what you've got hidden away, and they pull it out of the bag, somebody else has watched it and figured out how it's been done. So you've got to pass that knowledge on, and that must make you feel pretty, like, I know obviously flying around the world and getting all of that, but actually seeing some of these 19 and 20 year olds get into a World Cup cycle and things start to click, that must be, hold on, actually I've made an impact in the game that I love.
Yeah, again, it's that, again, why do we coach? Ultimately, like, we're chasing dopamine, aren't we? That dopamine hit, and how do we get it? We get it through sharing and supporting others, and that, as you say, that sort of that moment of being proud and happy to see that small part that maybe you helped a person with, or just got them to think in a different way, and ultimately they've done the work. So yeah, it's massively rewarding, and that's that's a very proud, humbling moment. But then there's the other side as well. Professional coaching is you never know what's around the corner. You've got no stability. I've got a very supportive wife and family, and yes, it's fantastic that I'm out here coaching, but then I've got my wife at home holding the fort with two children, and when I come home, it's like I'm like all hands on deck, trying to be super dad and picking up the slack, and so and like I say, there's always that uncertainty. You don't know, contracts come to an end, you don't know if things are going to be renewed. So I've come to learn is that all you can really do, like I say, is like do your best in that moment. And if it's good enough and you've built those connections with people and they see value, then often good things come of that. And that's what I can control, and that's really the focus. So it's a great to still be part of it. It's great those moments when you get this, you make an introduction to a technique and you get that like oh yeah moment, like the penny drops and you see the smile on their face, and it's like it's like, right, you've done it once, I've got to do it 1,000 times, so get to work and that. So I feel very fortunate. So
as you said, you're with World Rugby. So are you contracted to World Rugby, or are you sort of available to these nations and they reach out to you individually, or how does that work?
So I did like a contract, which is a specific amount of coaching days. So again, this will be my last trip for this year unless I get requested elsewhere. And then we'll see what happens going forward. My work with Italy, which again was an independent contract. So I was asked to come and set up the throwing program in Italy. So there was more of a standardized program. Now that was based around using the body mechanics, and I brought a great coach in called Jo Hopkins. She's like a biomechanics coach, and she had a dancing background. And what was great about that, the point of difference was that, of course, in Italy they don't play sport in schools, so they have to go to an external club. So when you're picking you're picking up like a 16-year-old, 17-year-old athlete, they're maybe not got that physical development or coordination. So we would identify any areas physically that they've got to develop, put extra exercises into those to help them to perform the movements. So this is my third year, and the sole purpose was for me to hand over the program to the Italian coaches in the pathway and an Italian to run the program. So I'm currently mentoring a coach that will take over the program. My last visit is in January, and then pass it on. And again, that's another example of, well, I've got to, put my money where my mouth is, because if I'm so against people trying to sort of like in a way being a little bit insecure about their position and sharing knowledge, well, I can't say one thing and not do the other. So it's been really rewarding, again, learning more about how you work with the Italians, which is a different culture, and also the different regions. That's been great for me. So for me, my personal development comes from being in different environments and, again, adapting and learning how we can make the most of that situation. And it was Wayne Smith who said, when he was fortunate to be coached by him at Northampton, is like, if you keep sharing your knowledge, it forces you to evolve. So I'm certainly a believer in that. As funny as it sounds, I've been fortunate in this game now to coach in the Premiership. I've coached players in the top 14. I've coached internationally. I've coached at a World Cup. So I feel very fortunate, and I've coached at all levels. And I've got to that stage where, again, as most young coaches and most young players are, you're in that striving mindset, and I certainly was. They're sort of in my early career, and it's like, okay, I'm now coaching the line out. All right, I want to be coaching the scrum. All right, I want to be the forwards coach. Right, I want to do more than that. And everyone, we get caught up into this. What's next? And I was certainly guilty of that. And you pick up scars along the way. I've been a consultant. You're last in and first out. And on reflection, you get to those moments of your career, because as a coach, you're either in work or you're out of work. That's it, and it's inevitable. You will be out of work, and those moments in your life where it's like, right, what's next? What am I going to do? Where am I going to focus? How am I going to build from there? And all those situations where it starts as a negative, you can look back on and say, well, okay, if I didn't get let go from this club because of financial reasons, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. There's no way. So, I wouldn't have coached at a World Cup. So, yeah, so that's kind of, again, probably been my little bit of resilience and probably stubbornness of, not giving up and trying to find a way. That's kind of where I feel at the moment. So, what will be, will be. I'm going to enjoy my week here, working hard with the guys, keeping in touch with them, finish up the program with Italy, and then see what happens.
Yeah, so they've obviously come across their own little challenges, stuff like that. So have you had to sort of go into much sort of S16 academy or under 16 academy group work? What's the sort of nuances you've come across if you've had to come into that level? Obviously, probably working at a high performance level, you haven't had to try and teach kids that can't throw to start with, but
well, you say that. So again, the pathway work in Italy again is exactly that. Is getting some of those players that might be back rowers, they might be props, and again, you can't make a decision on a 16, 17-year-old. So the view is that if the coach feels that is potentially a potential position for them, they come into the program. So yeah, we've had players that are green as grass, and they're starting from the basics. So I think what's important to say, isn't it, is that the challenge for that age group coach and for most coaches, let's say the classic sort of Tuesday, Thursdays, is how do you build your structure of your session that has an element of development in it. Now, yes, we can ask the players to get to training early or stay a little bit longer after, but if we can also build that into the training session, then they're going to get 2 hits of that repetition, and that's something that, again, you see in the modern game. If you go to watch the training sessions, they call them like athletic primers, and That might be some physical exercises to prepare them for maybe like, their footwork across the ground and their jumping, or the throwing, or the lifting, and it's just building those habits, and so that again, for the youngster, they're starting to develop, first of all, the movement pattern, but then they've got to get control within the movement pattern, and then we've also got to remember that they're growing, so there's going to get to a stage where they lose all their coordination, and again, that was something that we plotted through the pathway program in Italy, was again you taking some measurements of the players and realizing that when they get that spike and they grow from 19 to 20 and they start to put on some muscle mass, and how that then affects their mobility, their range of movement. So having that focus of as they're growing, making sure they're doing their foam rolling, their stretching, to be able to move how I'd like them to move. So so that's there's always that constant battle. But again, if you can think about, okay, what's the part of the game that you're trying to coach? Okay, break that down into its components. What's the movement pattern? If we've got internet access on the phones. It's like we've got a wealth of knowledge in our palm. So there's so much content out there that can help players, and building that in is a great way of their physical development, so that they can then perform the movement patterns with control, and then you build that into the part of the training session and then you can start looking at challenging them. So that's a big thing we talk about, is that put them in a situation, see how they can perform in that situation. Then you've got a talking point of what they can learn, what they can try next time, and that develops that understanding.
Sounds like I'm on the right path. I do a lot of situation play with them and just try to put them on, make them get them making decisions, because it's all right just going through the motions, getting banging line outs. It's make sure it's the presentation off the top as well, because that's sometimes the hardest bit. It's sometimes they're making sure that they can get one hand to it, they can get two hands to it. Trying to teach kids that are just learning a jump. You can get one hand, get two hands, or make sure you go back towards the 9, not push it the opposite way. So, situation plays work out really well for them, and they all get a little bit excited, and they think, "Oh, this is it." And then I have to stop them. They're like, "Lads, why did we make that decision? Why did we go that way? Why did we do that?" And then when you ask them, they're like, "I don't know." And there's one lad that always questions why I've stopped it and why I've said X, Y, and Z to understand it more. Nice. And he's always questioning why have you said that? Why have you done this? Why have you done that? I said because of this, and that, and that. He'll go away, disappear, and he'll make sure he never does it again. And I'm like, happy days, take that. And then there's others that just vacant, and it's so hard to work around different people's personalities, but when you get to the end of the game and end of a session and it's all starting to click, that's the bit that makes it so much easier to go back for a Thursday or a Tuesday after, or a game day. And it's been fun sort of coaching that age group. I did under 6s for a bit and under 8s, because my boy's 7. So I was in that age group by that's like herding cats. That's crazy.
That's right. Yeah, I when I finished playing at Northampton, took a contract with Bedford Blues, and they were still part-time training Tuesday, Thursday evenings, and I worked at Bedford Modern School, and that was a great apprenticeship for me to just work across all the different age groups, and as you say, talk about herding cats, and it was a sort of, I remember again, I had like working with the year 8s, and I designed this program, and again, because they all just honeypot, don't they? They just swarm. And I was so chuffed, and I was like, broke down this session and started with like passing, because I wanted them to pass around that swarm, and I wanted the defence to try and resemble some sort of line. So again, broke it all down. I was, fresh as like a level 3 coach and using all my knowledge there. And okay, we're going to build up the passing skill, and then we're going to build up some defence, and we're going to go from a drill into an exercise, which is a little bit more fluid, and then we're going to go to a game. And like 20 minutes in, the kids are just carnage, and they're just running around and not really doing anything. And you just have that moment, it's like, right, we're going to play a game. This is the game. Defenders, if you can make a tag before the attack have made 2 passes, you get the ball back. And instantly, a line, they're running up, attackers are going pass, carry, it's like, that was like a real sort of like,
a baptism of fire.
Moment, it was like, right, get rid of all that, static stuff, and, coach more of the game. And I know, like, you've had Rusty on, and, sort of see like what him and Fletcher have been doing with the Magic Academy, which is brilliant. And it's encouraging coaches to, again, try and explore that line of delivery, because again, in a way, as a coach, often you're in control. You set up the exercise, you set up the drill, you tell them what to do and how to do it. Where if you create games and structure within the games, as in laws and behaviours, you're out of control. And the skill becomes, what do you see, and what do you ask, and that again, I mean, is a great way of coaching, and something again that we're all trying to encourage. And like I say, that was again part of my philosophy with coaching the throwing, with it being a closed skill. It's going back to that. Well, if I give a correction, I will break your flow. That classic, don't think of a pink elephant. Do. So if I say, think about your posture, it's like, great, they're going to do that, but they're going to lose their rhythm and so on. So it's like, right, how can I get them to perform that movement with an exercise, a piece of equipment, without getting them to think about the movement?
Yes. I know some days they turn up to training and I'm just like, we're not messing around with situations. We're just, lads, just there's a ball, we'll go gameplay, you make the decisions, then give me the answers why it went wrong or how it went right. We'll debrief it, go again. Because if we're standing there just throwing the ball consistently, I know I'm going to get nothing out of them. So sometimes it's easier to put them into a game situation and say, right, what are we going to do there? Why would we do that? Let's get on with it. If you've got them stood around chatting shit to them, they're going to lose interest, don't they? And it's sometimes just let them play. Like the first time I picked them up, I went to training for the first time. I hadn't met them, didn't know any of them by Adam, and it was a case of they're all dollying around in warm up, everything like that. I was like, right, every time you drop the ball, you're around the pitch, and then they were like, whoa, what's going on here? And then that was it. They even started self-policing it. I was like, I don't need to be involved now. I know that. And then we got on the pitch and I said, lads, I don't know what any of you can do. Let's just go play. And let them play. And I was running defence against them and stuff like that. Ball up, ball down, all of that. And going in for turnovers. So I was winning turnovers, and I probably must have won 30 plus turnovers in this gameplay situation over an hour session. And they were like, how are you so quick? How did you manage that? I was like, lads, because you're too slow and you're going up one at a time. This is easy pickings. Next session, that reduced to 20 turnovers. Session after that, it reduced to 10. Session after that, it was down to 5. Session after that, it was maybe 1 or 2. I was like, lads, that bit's been solved now. I don't need to teach you the rest of it. I'll teach you the intricacies as we go, but you're now making sure you're securing that ball off. And they're like, right, yeah, now I know why you've done it.
It's like, like sparring, like you say, that 16-year-old boys, they need direction, they need guidelines, they need boundaries, don't they? So, want their around behaviour straight away. And again, what have you done? If you're going in for the ball, you've created a contest, you've created a challenge, and then it's like, right, how can we smash the coach? How can we get there before you? And that's and that's what we all crave, isn't it? We crave that competition. So, you know, in your way, you've created that, and that's then created a focus without having to do your classic static drills, your hit pads and clear, going down and presenting and clearing over. So everything becomes more fluid. Because again, aren't we? We're asking these young players to play what they see. So if you are going to take it to like a technical drill, which has got its place, because again, you're getting high reps, you're getting you know, that muscle memory. The key is how like say, how do you build that into the fluidity of gameplay, and then you get those examples, you get those talking points.
And the thing is, we're not on the pitch. We're not on the pitch. We've got to pass that knowledge as much as we can over to them, and then they've got to deliver it during a game time. And that's as pitch side coaching. You stand back and you think, why have you done that? And then you grab. I'll speak to them after. I'm like, lads, why did we make that decision? Then they're like, well, I've done this because this and this. I was like, that's fine. As long as I've got an answer and you understand why you made that decision, we've moved forward. It makes everything. It's allowing those lads to make decisions for themselves and understand why they made that decision. As a team, it makes everything so much easier.
And again, I think with like say with how we're so comfortable communicating now is it goes back to that. It's like, well, those young players, they don't know what they don't know. So if we can give them some context of good practice and what that looks like with some video clips and sent out onto like, you know, your Facebook, WhatsApp groups and whatever, that creates an image of what good looks like and what we're aspiring to achieve. Then your conversations become a little bit more guided, don't they? Because they're more, okay, yes, you might have made this decision. Thank you for clarifying what you did.
Yeah.
Based on what does great look like, how do you do? What would you do differently? And again, those coaches that maybe have got like an office job and they got time to sort of go and get on YouTube and find a load of video clips, you know, is a great tool. And that was one of the conversations we had today with like in the 20s camp. Is that if you're working with players that have had very low rugby IQ because they've started later in their life, it's like, well, if we talk about developing leaders, their knowledge and experience is lower than the level they're playing at. So we need to help give them that education first and guide them so that then they have a deeper understanding of the why that we're going to call these line outs or these strike plays or whatever it might be. So then on the pitch they can spread that knowledge and police that. You know, then over time it becomes a little bit more of an open. It becomes more of a collaboration. Okay, here's the opposition. This is what do you see? What should we do? Based, you know, you're the guys on the pitch. Therefore, what's our strategy? What's our framework? And again, I think like it's important as we're dealing with those 16 to 18, 18 to 20-year-olds. Those brackets is that is factored into their development.
Yeah, 100%. Because they're really good lads. Really proud of what they've done so far, and they're absorbed so much in such a short space of time. And as you said, you don't want that system overload and they just go into default and that's it, they shut down. Because as you said, that age group, it's easy to lose interest, easy for them to call it a day, and that's the last thing we just want kids to play rugby and enjoy it. That's the main thing. Yeah,
and that's it, isn't it? It's their experience. So those that you might say that got that vacant look, it's like, well, they're just their development might just take a fraction longer, you know, and that's something that we're seeing through the Italian pathways. That as we sort of made projections of like, okay, what's the performance markers of an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, you know, when they go to the Rugby World Cup for the under-20s. What we're finding is post-World Cup is when we see a spike in their development, and that's where the guys then step into like a senior academy with Zebra or with Benetton, which again is that next level up. That season is when we see a real sort of like kick on with their development. So maybe if they had more numbers, maybe if they started younger, that spike could have happened at 20. And of course, in England, you know, when I speak to people involved in the academies, that's their answer. It's like, we have to make decisions on them so young, and that's often why they pick the big specimen and so on, because they need to know they've got that physical attributes, and their view is, well, they can coach the skill after. So you know, that's the challenge. So for those nations with low participation, they take a longer time span, and often, you know, like say in Italy, they're looking at 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, you know, starting to, as they evolve through the pathway for front row guys. In England, they're already in an academy, aren't they? When they're playing their under 20s, so 18, 19, decisions have got to be made on what they see there and then, and we know, you know, the frontal lobe's not developed till post 1920, and we're asking players, we're judging players on decision making in games. It's like, well, you know, they're still kids. So but those are the challenges. That's
do you
what
think
it takes
that
for elite sport.
Do you think that judgment is a little bit too early in England? Like, there is maybe in Italy, like you can't. Most people seem to get to 22, 23 and find like a dad's strength, with his reference previously on this pod. Do you think the focus to make decisions so early in England? Do you think players potentially peak earlier, and that's why they don't last as long potentially, or some miss the boat, and then we're having to resort to using Dan Cole and Joe Marler as our pretty much first choice props because we haven't got the other options at the minute? Is that something that's been a detriment to the England team at the minute?
There's a few things to unlock in there. So again, look, England have got the benefits of a big player pool. So the reality is, like I say, we're talking about elite sport. We're talking about the 1-2 percenters. So when the pool's that big, they can make decisions. And again, for a lot of players, unfortunately, it's like they get to that, they get through the academy. Are they going to go get a fully professional academy? You know, they get to like 16 to 18, and that experience where the pyramid's very wide, you know, to get onto that next level, not many make it. You know, you're only looking at like 10 to 12 players. But hey, what's it like in football? This is elite. This is what we're talking about. This is elite sport, and we have to accept that. So, what probably needs investing is the exits. And again, you know, from the countries that I work with and so on, is that those players in the pathways that don't go on to the Zebras, the Benettons, or get picked up in France with the Italian pathway, they go into the professional leagues in Italy, which again then starts to raise the standard there. Now we're talking about almost like a generational cycle of players to see a performance improvement, but it takes as long as it takes because you're governed by how many players you've got. So look, you know, England, a very wealthy union, as I say, you know, I've been fortunate to be coached by guys like Simon Hardy, you know, and the RFU took a decision to cut all their skill development coaches, and their view was that the clubs can pay for those coaches, and the clubs can invest those skills. And again, what happens in sport is that again, it's almost like, you know, a generational cycle where you see, well, was that a positive move, or was or you know, what are we dealing with now? Now, you know, Dan Cole, he was an academy player at Leicester when I was playing at Bedford Blues, and he came over and he was applying his trade. He was,
well. He had hair then as well, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he was like long locks, yeah. And what a fantastic career. So
there's no shade on them. Like they're very good at what they do at the minute. But is that our best option in front of us?
But remember, this is where the game's going. Is if you've got no platform, it is so pivotal to international rugby. The margins are so fine. You know, let's remember, it's like, everyone that says like, oh, this player's playing great in the Premiership, let's get him in, let's get him in. It's like the step up from Premiership to international is colossal.
Yeah.
So, and then we're talking about, as we say, about like physical development. 23-year-old, and then you're being put under the microscope at test level. In the front row is a massive challenge. So I think, in certain positions, like say you mature layer, everyone's talking now around playmakers. The 9s and 10s is like getting to 26 is about a good age where, because you've got to have time in the saddle, and while you're in there, what's happening is you're seeing those pictures come at you so frequently. You're making decisions based on split seconds of what's coming at you, and that's then when you're almost then start to develop that time on the ball and so on. So you can imagine in the Premiership, you get to 26, you've had lots of exposure, lots of reps within that, and then you go to internationals, which again is another level,
another step up again.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, there's a reason why there's obviously a lot more intelligent people and successful people in coaching in international levels that stick to this tried and tested pathway. Bring a youngster into the environment, then take them out. So they've had a taste. Now you go and show me that these are the markers you want to go and get there. They then come back in. They might get some time on the bench, and it builds that way. Now it's always been that way, hasn't it? It's always been that way. So,
but that's rugby, isn't it? Because it's been used forever. Like we did you've then got the bomb squad, and now obviously Bill Beaumont wants to change that because he thinks he's got too many subs, and he's probably well, he's obviously gone off there, and then Razzy's pulled him apart in a response there. But do you like with that as well? So many things constantly change, and I understand why some of them do. But going back to Dan Carl and everything like that, why we've obviously got Genji was there, very, very good player as well. We've obviously lost Sinks to Toulon. Didn't have the greatest few seasons in Bristol. Probably, do you think he moved himself out the shop window slightly and has gone away to work on it to come back? Or and then you've got Ben Abano and stuff like that. And we've got plenty of very good players that have had that taste and been at the table, but we've had to resort back to the tried and tested Cole and Marler pair up, which are brilliant. I'm big fans of them, don't get me wrong, but I don't know where are we going to go after that? Because Marler might have a season left, and
I think what's great now is players are really taking ownership of their personal development, and if Carl Sinclair feels that it's right for him to go overseas and really challenge himself, to top 14, that's only going to be a positive for him, and he's going to learn some things about himself and be exposed to situations where he's got to evolve, he's got to adapt, and that's going to be so healthy. If he chooses to return to play in England, or if they change the rules about selection. Again, it goes back to that time, that sort of that timeline, doesn't it? So if we've got these young props, these like early 20s to 25s and so on, well, as we talk about that, developing that physical strength or functional strength, at that level, do people start to come into their own in their late 20s? So the Coles and the Marlers is like, all credit to them.
Oh yeah.
Is that now that's the standard. Now if you're a younger player, you're in that system, your job is to get there, isn't it? To get to, and that's what creates the beauty of the competition. So I think we have seen shifts in tier 1 nations around their recruitment policy and so on. So, but again, you can't cheat time, and the guys need exposure, they need good coaching, and then they need, like I say, that time in the saddle to then learn how to adapt in the moment. And so that's where we are.
Dan, It's been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, you're a few hours behind me. I'm now sat at pretty much 1 o'clock in the morning here. At some point, my kids are probably going to wake up and wake me up again. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and it's been a really nice change of pace to the pod, to go about a slightly different way through your journey and how you've done it, and how you go about business, and World Rugby actually shining the light on emerging nations and obviously supporting that as well, which is really good to see that those nations are starting to put themselves in the window. Obviously, do you feel that Brazil, one last sort of prediction then, do you think Brazil are going to get themselves to the World Cup?
I think what's going to be great, and I'm going to encourage people, watch the World Cup qualifiers. They're
phenomenal.
Be a great spectacle. They really are, and the special part for me is, again, coming to these environments, and the players are so hungry and driven to learn, and this is so big for them and their family and their community, and there's a deep emotional connection and pride about what they're doing, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a really good watch, and I think probably one final thing to say, and I think Portugal really sort of blazed a trail on this, is that being a tier 3, tier 2, developing nation, that is going and putting in the standard structure of how we see the game played. It's like, well, you don't have the athletes to do that, so let's get creative. Let's find the Brazilian way, the Chilean way, the Uruguayan way. Okay, the Spain, the Portugal way, and I think that, like, some of those games in the last World Cup were the most exciting, enjoyable games, because you see, instead of seeing the classic, the free pods, man out the back, and punch rugby and box kick and so on, you saw teams moving the ball earlier in the pitch than they would normally do, and it made a great spectacle. So again, it's like, if you're gonna compete with the superpowers, you've got to get creative and find your own identity. So it's great fun, working with the guys as they're starting to discover that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing Uruguay firsthand. So I'm going to Spain, Uruguay in November in Madrid. I got Spain, Fiji to go to, and then Spain, USA as well. So can't wait to see some sort of tier 2 international rugby firsthand as well, because Uruguay they're just so exciting at times, aren't they? It's literally kamikaze rugby at times. You think, what are you doing? And then it sort of starts paying off. It's brilliant. And then you show the kids are like, oh, do you see that? I'm like, yeah, just don't do that again, because you ain't going to manage it.
But that's it. Those nations that have got like a really hot, dry climate and so on, their pitches are hard, and they've got such dynamic athletes, and that's often then, like I say, where they catch you out is they run the ball when you'd expect them to set up a phase or a kick or something, and they're playing for their nation, their country, their family and everything, and they're relentless. So it's fantastic watch.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. So, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and thank you so much for finally getting this one in the diary and diving in from São Paulo as well, mate. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, mate. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, mate.
Cheers.
Right. Well, that brings another episode of Rugby Through the Leagues podcast to an end. Just want to say a massive thank you to Dan Richmond for jumping on live on set from São Paulo, Brazil. Obviously got some unbelievable knowledge out of that line-out coaching techniques of how you can overcome players' willingness to get involved into new methods. But what a bloke, what a rugby CV, what a bit of knowledge, and it's great to see some really positive stuff being done by World Rugby, so hats off to them for supporting the tier 2, tier 3 and emerging nations. Next week we've got the Richmondshire RUFC lads coming on. As I said, we had the schedule mixed up a little bit due with the grassroots stuff, but we've now got another grassroots club coming back on next week. Up north this time, so slightly different to where we normally sort of concentrate, but they've been sharing a bit on the TikTok and want to try and get under the skin of what they do and where they've been. They've had a tough season last year, so it'll be really interesting to get on top of how this season's going doing and their big plans that they've got out there. A really good bunch of lads as well, so it'll be a good laugh. 3 of them coming on as well, so 4-way interviews, which should be good fun, bit of banter, bit of grassroots rugby again for everyone, so hopefully you guys join in for that one. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, get involved in this one as well, because Dan Richmond, absolute fountain of knowledge for rugby, line out, scrum coaching, everything, all the bits that you need. Dan's also got an ebook which I'll link out later on the socials, so Dan's obviously got that if you need to reach out to support with him as well. So great bloke, top bloke, and another great episode. So one last thing from me, thank you and goodbye.